welcome to the Okie Woodsman channel. Today I'm going to go ahead and help out the person that absolutely hates using a chainsaw with 3 bits of information or 3 tips. Watch me work and then we'll come back and talk about the saws and the techniques I used. Why do so many people hate running chainsaws? I think one of the largest chainsaw myths out there is that they're terrible to run. You see, when you talk to people about, hey, I'm gonna run a chainsaw, or they think about, I have some work to do with a chainsaw, most people are disgusted. They just really don't like doing it. And I have a suspicion there's really one main factor. I'm gonna go ahead and complete some work. I'm testing a new product today. I'm gonna be using the average homeowner type saw with one important upgrade. And I think that this one thing, or realizing one thing, can really actually change your outlook on running a chainsaw. It's not as bad as you might think. And I will say this, who hates running a chainsaw when it's operating well and it's cutting like butter? Think about that. Let's get started. Got to move a couple important things here. A well-running saw certainly helps, but this is not what we're talking about. So good thing I took down that bird feeder. We didn't hurt our dogwood, which is good. Looks like the stump held on pretty well, right there. It's got a hollow spot, and that's a little tree right there. Crazy how these oaks do that. I'm gonna start processing what I believe is this water oak here with my Echo CS310. You might wonder why we're doing this. Well, you'll notice here that we've got some stakes here, got some paint marks on the ground, kind of setting a grade. Okay, and I've got a project coming, so that's the reason for this. Also, that tree was rubbing upon this pine right up in there. And also up in there. We want to focus more on having the pines near the house, and the reason why is they're much less of a threat to our home than the large oaks. The large oaks get limbs that hang way out. They're very heavy. If they break off, they can damage our house much easier. The pines grow straight and tall, much easier for me to remove personally. I can climb them and get them out of the way if I need to. This is where it was rubbing on the pine in one spot. This is another spot it was rubbing on my pine. Tip number 1, skill. Skill comes with time, but also you can offset your skill with being careful. Let me explain. Everyone's done it. Even the most seasoned chainsaw operator does this. Still, I do it sometimes, and especially novices will do it. When you're making a cut, we have a tendency to want to cut all the way through down to the ground. One of the best things you can do is simply stop before you get anywhere near the ground, roll the log if at all possible, and finish your cut away from the dirt. These are just things that you learn with time, watching videos like this, and with experience. Tip number 2 is knowledge. You don't know what you don't know. Oftentimes we get frustrated thinking that we need to blame our equipment, or we need to blame the brand, or hey, I just absolutely hate using a chainsaw because it's miserable. That has a lot to do with knowledge, and I'm going to help you out with that today. And this ties into tip number 3. Your equipment matters, but it doesn't matter as much as you might think. Let me explain. As you look here at my wall, this is some of my saws. It's not all of them. You'll notice that there's really 3 brands represented here. You've got Echo over here, Husqvarna, more Echo, Steel, the legendary MS460. We've got a Husqvarna 395 tucked away down there. And the flat out truth is it doesn't matter what brand you have. They all do the same thing. To take it further, it almost doesn't even matter what size you have. Small will do as much as big, but oftentimes slower. Of course, there's limitations there. Another bit of that knowledge is it doesn't matter what power source you've got. You can have 2-stroke, you can have battery, you can even have a saw that plugs into 110 electric power if you want to deal with a cord. If you're the type of person that says they hate using a chainsaw and dread it, could it be because the saw is just not cutting well? I bet you that's a majority of your case. Everyone is always impressed when they pull a chainsaw out of the box or pick one up from a dealer. Everything's operational, chain is sharp, and it's ready to go. When you first put it into that wood, I would say there's nothing quite like a saw that just goes through the material like butter. That quickly is ended with use and errors. Sometimes it's ended because you cannot get away from it. Sometimes wood is just dirty. Today when I needed to remove that tree, I grabbed this saw right here. It's not that it's the most fun saw that I can run. The reason why I grabbed it is because it would do the job, and it's also set up with this right here. This chain is often frowned upon by many seasoned chainsaw operators But I wanted to go ahead and use it in a real world situation and see how it did. This chain actually has carbide tips on here. I can tell you right now, they're sharp. When I compare them to the chain on this electric saw here, this is a nano chain, steel cutters. This was a brand new chain. It cut extremely well, but so did this. The difference truly is material type. Yes, there is minute differences in performance, but for the person that has a task that's not an enthusiast, that wants to have a chain that potentially lasts longer, we'll talk more about that here in a minute, this carbide chain from Rapco Industries can be a lifesaver. We were talking about knowledge earlier, and part of that is operation of the saw, but also the knowledge to be able to sharpen and maintain your chains. I always recommend to every user that needs to run a saw, learn how to sharpen. It takes time. Some people don't want to commit the time. Some people are disinterested in committing the time. And for many of you, you may run down to your local steel dealership and hand them $30 a chain and buy them like candy. I know there's many of you out there. If you hit metal, if you hit the dirt and hit rocks with any chain, you're going to ruin it real quickly. But sometimes you can't help it and you get into a little bit of dirty wood, and that's where a carbide chain can really help. If you're doing a lot of firewood, if you've drug the logs through the dirt, a chain like this can last significantly more time. If you cut in clean wood, a chain like this is going to stay sharper than this for much longer. I believe the manufacturer of this claims somewhere around 20 times more cutting. That's a lot. Some people say that they put a file on a chain like this after every tank. I personally do not think that's necessary, especially if you've been cutting in optimal conditions. But let's just say this chain here, you put a file on it every tank. If this will stay sharp, let's just say for 10 to 15 tanks, you're not spending as much time sharpening. This can help get you further down the road for longer. If you're the type of person that starts running a saw till it burns through the wood and then you quit what you're doing and go to the store and buy a new one, might I recommend to you, first of all, stop doing that. Second of all, consider a carbide chain. It might be the perfect tool for you. Yes, they are more expensive. Yes, they do have some limitations in cutting speed, and they are more difficult to sharpen. This is the way you can sharpen them with a rotary tool. I haven't tried it yet, but this is what Rapco Industries sells to do the maintenance on their chains. So no, if you rock this chain, it's not trash. It's not a large investment gone. I don't know the cost on this particular chain here. Rapco did send me the chains in order to test. I had very good luck with this one. This one goes on a steel 25-inch bar. I was very impressed with how it performed, and I wanted to go ahead and utilize this 3/8 low profile chain for a more appropriate task. And today proved to me that the chain works very well for normal stuff. I don't care if you're using a steel saw, a Husqvarna saw, an Echo saw, an old Poulan saw, a new Poulan saw, whatever, battery saw, it doesn't matter. This is applicable to every person running a chainsaw. If you keep the saw sharp, you're going to enjoy using it. If you keep it out of the dirt, that keeps the saw sharp, you're going to enjoy using it. If you invest in a carbide chain, it could help you to enjoy running a saw more because you have a more durable cutter. It's not perfect, it can get damaged, but it might help you get down the road a little further. One of the other major things that you must consider is if your saw is not operating correctly, meaning it's hard to start, it wants to die all the time, you try to rev it and it bogs down, stop using it. It's actually quite dangerous to use equipment that is not operating properly. If you just recently purchased a saw, go back to your dealership and say, hey, it's not working properly. Make sure you haven't been abusing it by running dull chains, dropping trees on it, running it over with a tractor or a truck or whatever. I'll give you an example of a saw not being quite right. At my workplace, we purchased a brand new MS250. That saw was an absolute despair to start. Does that mean that all MS250s are bad? Absolutely not. Does that mean that all steel chainsaws are bad? Absolutely not. Every single brand out there is going to have troubles eventually. Every single brand out there can leave the dealership in less than optimal working condition. You won't see me out there struggling to run a saw. If it doesn't run right, it's done. I used the CS310 because it's a pleasure to use. It's easy, it's lightweight, it sips the fuel. It may have used a third of the tank to cut up that tree, to cut it down and cut it up. This was the first brand new saw I ever purchased, probably about 6 years ago now. That's never given me a single bit of trouble. It now has been slightly modified for a little bit more performance, but relatively it's a stock Echo CS310. One of the most underwhelming saws that you can ever imagine, truly. But I wanted to go ahead and use it with this chain, and it did just fine. If you're new here, I want to give you an opportunity to save quite a bit of money on your next chainsaw. If you're looking for a new chainsaw, or you want to get your first chainsaw, sawsuppliers.com in the description is a great affordable place to purchase your saw, especially if you're thinking about going to your local Lowe's or local Home Depot. Give Saw Suppliers a shot. I think they'll beat the price. In fact, I'm pretty positive they'll beat the price. They ship for free and you get a discount using my discount code. Many of my viewers have already saved big money on things such as blowers, string trimmers, chainsaws, and supplies. Supplies like this can quickly add up. I have always done my best to save myself as much money as possible. Steve at sawsuppliers.com is committed to having lower prices on Oregon bars and chains like this. If you're looking for your supplies like Red Armor, two-stroke mix, or anything like that, check out my links below and you can save some big money and get free shipping. Thank you so much for watching the Okie Woodsman channel. If you have any questions, go ahead and check out the comment section below. Ask any questions and I will try to get back to you, or the excellent viewers of this channel are always willing to help. Thank you to everyone that's here, and I'll see you on the next one.